What's happening, you voracious theory goblins? Jazz trumpeter Bobby Spellman here to welcome you to the 5th episode in our jazz improvisation series. In our last episode with the rhythm section covering secondary dominants, I casually mentioned the modes of the melodic minor scale in the context of playing the 5 of 2. Now, in today's episode, I thought it'd be worthwhile to take a little time to go through the melodic minor modes, the modes of the melodic minor scale, in order to illuminate them so that you may use them in future improvisational exploits. So, today we are going to cover the C melodic minor scale and talk about how to use some of the modes of the melodic minor scale on this exciting episode of
Theory with Bob.
All right, in our first episode, we discussed the 7 modes of the major scale: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. In today's episode, we are going to cover 7 new modes based on the melodic minor scale. So, before we dive into the modes, we're going to talk a little bit about what the melodic minor scale is. And depending on what style of music you're playing, you're going to deal with one of 2 different forms of the melodic minor scale. So, in classical music, the melodic minor scale is different ascending than it is descending. Ascending, the melodic minor scale is 1, 2, minor third, 4, 5, natural 6, natural 7, back to the 1 again, the octave, and then going down, it's exactly the same as the Aeolian mode or natural minor. 1, flat 7, flat 6, 5, 4, flat 3, 2, and 1. However, in jazz, we only use the ascending version of the melodic minor scale, being 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1. Another way that you can think about it is it's exactly the major scale, except that we're replacing the third with the minor third. All right, by only changing that one note in the structure of the scale from the Ionian mode, the major scale, to melodic minor, that's going to change all of the structures of each of the modes based on each of the 7 notes in the scale. Now, these modes are very useful for a series of different chords that you may run into in some of your favorite jazz standards. So we're going to take a little time now to go through those modes, and I'm going to talk about how to use them, what they sound like, and which ones are more commonly found than others. So we're going to start off with the melodic minor scale itself. This is a very useful scale if you are playing a minor major chord, I should say. All right, a minor major 7. So you'll remember from our previous episodes that you can construct a minor major 7 chord with a minor third and a major 7, which gives you this delightful sound. So I'm going to play that chord on the piano and attempt to play the corresponding melodic minor scale on the trumpet so that you can hear what it sounds like if I use that melodic minor scale over the C minor major 7 chord. So here we have a C minor major 7. I'm going to play a little bit so you can hear what that sounds like. Another time that you will use the melodic minor scale in an improvisation is if you're dealing with the 1 chord as a minor triad. So at times, there's a lot of different options that you can play over a minor triad as the tonic chord. If you're in the key of C minor, for example, and the whole piece ends on a minor triad, one option is to use the melodic minor scale. We will talk a little bit more about how to navigate the tonic minor chords later on, but you can just know that that is one of a couple of options. So that one comes up from time to time. Now we're going to move on. The second mode of melodic minor, we're going to talk in C melodic minor right now. because it's just going to ground us in a particular key that will make it easier to understand as we go along. So if we're in C melodic minor, the second mode is going to be a D Phrygian with a natural 6, and that's going to sound like this. Now, this one does not come up that often. I do not run into the Phrygian natural 6 mode very often. In theory, where you would use it would be on a D sus 4 with a flat 9 and a natural 6, perhaps. If you had a chord that was a D minor 6 with a flat 9 on it for some reason, it would sound like this. That would work as well. But that's a fairly unusual chord. So we're just going to move right along, because you're not going to run into this kind of a mode very often. You certainly may, but I think that we'll reserve discussion of more, let's say, rare modes for specific episodes in the future. Right now, I want this to be a practical, I want these episodes to be of practical use to you, so we're going to stick to the ones that you're going to use more often. Now, that brings us to a delightful mode, the Lydian augmented mode. So Lydian augmented is going to be the Lydian mode, but with a sharp 5, and that is going to sound like this. This is an extremely useful mode if you run into a major 7 sharp 5 chord. They come up from time to time, so it's useful to know the Lydian augmented scale. You'd also see perhaps a, let's say in this case it would be an E flat major 7 sharp 5 sharp 11 chord. That would be an instance in which this particular mode would be very useful. I'm going to try to play that on the piano, and then I will play the mode on the trumpet. So there you have it, the Lydian augmented mode. Once again, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, sharp 5, 6, 7, and back to the 1 again. So that will be the third mode of melodic minor. Very useful on a major 7 sharp 5 chord. All right, moving on. This is another one that will be very useful to you. This is the Lydian dominant mode. So in the key of C melodic minor, or the greater parent scale of C melodic minor, we might say, if we're starting on the 4, that gives us the Lydian dominant sound, which is a Mixolydian with a sharp 4 on it. That would be another way to think about it, is Mixolydian sharp 4. So Lydian dominant is either a Lydian with a flat 7 or a Mixolydian with a sharp 4, and it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. This is probably the second or third most commonly used melodic minor mode. This is an extremely common one to use. Anytime you see a dominant 7th with a sharp 11 on it, it would be common to use a Lydian dominant mode. So that one will come up with some degree of frequency. Now I'm going to play it on the piano here. I'm going to take a spin on the trumpet. It sounds like this. So that is your F Lydian dominant. Once again, that will come in handy next time you see a dominant 7th with a sharp 11 on it. All right, that brings us to the next mode, the 5th mode, we will call a Mixolydian with a flat 6. So if we start on G, that might give us this sound. Not that sound. Let's try that again. So there you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, and then back to the root, in this case, G. Now, this is a lesser used mode, but where you might use this is as described in our last episode, in episode 4. If you have a situation in which you've got the 5 of 2 in a particular key, in the last episode we were doing G7 to a C minor chord. So in that case, if you're resolving to C minor, if you're doing the 5 of 2 in the key of B flat, for example, you could use the G Mixolydian flat 6 if you wanted to try to stick as closely as you could to the sort of tonic of the whole, or the key of the piece, let's say. But it's a little bit less of a common scale to use. You could also use it if you have a chord in which you have a 9 on the chord, so a dominant 9 but with a flat 13. So here we have a G7 with a natural 9 but a flat 13. In that case, it would be logical to use the G Mixolydian with a flat 6. But once again, this is a somewhat less commonly used mode, but I'm giving it to you just in case you want to use it. All right, that brings us to the 6th mode of the melodic minor scale, and that is, we'll call it Locrian with a natural 2. Now, this one will be used if you have a minor 9 with a flat 5. This is not unheard of. These chords come up from time to time, but very often, probably more than 9 times out of 10, if you're running into a minor 7 flat 5 chord, you're just going to be dealing with regular old Locrian. Now, we're going to talk about that at length in our minor 2-5-1 episode, which is going to come up in a couple of episodes. We're going to be talking about minor 2-5-1s, and in that case, we will talk about the Locrian mode. But in this case, we're dealing with the possibility that a minor 7 flat 5 will also include the natural 9, which will sound like this. It's a very delightful sounding chord. I like this chord a lot, but admittedly, it does not come up all that often. If it does come up and you have an A minor 9 with a flat 5, or an A half diminished with a 9, natural 9, that gives you a, you're going to end up using the Locrian with a natural 2, and that's going to sound like this. So just a little bit of a variation on the Locrian mode. Another thing I'll mention right now while we're diving in here is that it's useful to understand that we have the melodic minor modes, that you have a parent scale that is melodic minor, and we have a series of modes that come from that structure. But also, when you run into these chords in the wilds on a tune that you're working on, it's pretty easy to just move one note around to change the modes that you're already familiar with. So in that case, you can really think about these modes as really coming more from the root of the mode itself, rather than having to do the mathematics to bring you back to the parent scale. So for example, it would be easy to deduce from a minor 7 flat 5 with a 9 on it that you would simply take that Locrian mode that you're used to and change the 9 from a flat 9 or a flat 2 to the natural 2. So it's not necessary to always be doing this math to figure out exactly what parent scale, so to speak, all of these things come from. And sometimes that can be somewhat confusing. So as I mentioned in episode 1.5, you may choose to think about these various modes as just being related to the root note. So in that case, Locrian natural 2 is going to be the 1, natural 2, minor 3rd, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, back to the 1 again. All right, that brings us to the 7th mode of melodic minor, possibly the most useful of these modes and the one that we will talk about the most going forward, and that is the altered scale. It's got its own fun name because it would be the most common choice on an altered chord. Now, to talk about the altered chord, altered is a dominant 7th, but all of the possible alterations take place. So, if, for example, we have a B altered chord, that's going to be the 1, the 3rd. Now, it's not going to have a 5 in it. Instead, we're going to have a sharp 5, the flat 7, and then we have both the flat 9 and the sharp 9, as well as the sharp 4. Now, there's a better way to voice this, but for now, as we're showing you on the piano here, that gives you all of these notes. Now, this is a common chord to use. You will not often use all of the alterations at once, but if you see a chord symbol that says, for example, B7 alt, that means that you're dealing with an altered chord. So that's another way to voice it would be the 1, 3, sharp 4, 7. You could put the sharp 5 up here, and then the sharp 9, or you could put the flat 9 on it. Sometimes people will play the altered scale if the chord symbol just says flat 9, flat 13. But if you're dealing with a B7 altered or a chord that specifically says altered, you're going to deal with the altered scale. This is possibly the most popular choice on a 5-chord resolving to a minor chord. So if you're in the key of C minor, and you have a G7 chord, G7 flat 9 or G7 flat 9 sharp 5 or G7 flat 9 flat 13, it would be very common to use the altered scale to create a certain amount of tension that will resolve to the tonic minor chord. So in this case, we're going to take a little spin on the B altered scale. So that is going to sound like this. Once again, what's distinctive about this scale is that you have the 1, the flat 9, the sharp 9, as well as the 3. So the sharp 9 can be regarded as the flat 3, but you can't have 2 3s in a scale. But for some reason, you can have 2 9s. So explain that one. I don't know. We're just having fun here. All right, so 1, flat 9, sharp 9, natural third, sharp 4, sharp 5, flat 7, and back to the 1 once again. I'll play that for you just so you can hear it. And that is an interesting scale because unlike what we will talk about in our next episode, the Phrygian dominant scale, which is another popular choice on a 5 leading to a 1 minor chord, this has a sharp 4 in the mix as well. So if you were to see a chord symbol that was, for example, let's say, I'm making this up as we go along here, but a B7 with a sharp 9, sharp 4, that would be another great reason to use the altered scale. Now, typically speaking, once again, these chords are just going to be labeled as B7 altered. All right? So you'll see that frequently, B7 altered. This is shorthand for the altered scale, including sharp 9, flat 9, sharp 4, sharp 5, and the flat 7. All right, gang, so that brings us to the 7th mode of melodic minor. The modes that you will use all the time are melodic minor itself. If you want to put the natural 6 and the natural 7 on top of a minor triad, that is a common choice. The Lydian augmented scale is extremely useful if you have a major 7 sharp 5 chord. Lydian dominant comes up all the time if you've got a dominant 7 with a sharp 4 or a sharp 11, which mean the same thing, you will remember from our first episode. And the altered scale. Those will be the most common choices, the most common modes that you'll run into from the melodic minor scale. Now, these different modes and chords have become more popular in different eras of jazz, so you might run into more of the modes of the melodic minor scale in the mid-60s, for example, than you might in the mid-50s, and you'll notice that different styles of music and different records will use some of these modes in different ways. But the ideal here is to be able to hear these various modes and to practice using them in improvisational settings. So I'm going to put a link in the description below to this chart of the melodic minor modes so that you can have them for yourself. I wrote them all out in C melodic minor based on the C melodic minor scale. And as we go through this series, I will be sure to bring up when the melodic minor scale is a popular choice to use over a particular chord or chord progression. All right, gang, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that helps in illuminating some of the other possibilities of modes that you might use to improvise with. If you like that video, give us a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. We're going to be doing this jazz improvisation series for a little while, and we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of different ways that you can improvise on your favorite jazz standards. So follow along, and we will have some fun with this. And if you are looking for lessons in jazz improvisation or various instruments, you can find us on our website at www.ridgewoodschoolofmusic.com, or send us an email at ridgewoodschoolofmusic@gmail.com. All right, gang, I hope you had fun with that. Have a wonderful time practicing, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.